was sponsored by Sadie Bell. Otherwise, it would not have been recorded. Thank you. All right, and my big gulp. All right. Okay, so I wet my brush. I'm using a flat. I did use the one that has the Galkid liquid in it, but I'm not gonna, like I said, you're not supposed to use like a ton. A lot of the time when brushes don't use for a little bit, they get a little stiff. It's kind of like waking it up. So with watercolor, think of how, you usually wet your brush. It's kind of like that. It doesn't need to be soaking wet, but it's like, hey, wake up, remember what you do. Remember your potential. Okay, so we have those value studies, which I think I have mine here. The value color studies of her, which you could totally refer to. That's kind of the purpose of why I gave you those, is if you felt lost. You had those Doppler like pulled out colors you could refer to on the slides. So that being said, painting beyond the photo. What does that mean? That means making it even better than the photo. Well, what does that mean? Expressive, artistic voice, your choices. Maybe photos can flatten things. I want to try to get the color bands a little more accurately to how I know she actually looks. And that's what will be interesting about next week, is when she's here, you can kind of, she's getting paid to stare at her face, so stare at her face, okay? So I'm going to get my Cab Red out. I'm going to make my skin tone, even though I have a little bit there, but that one's all crusty anyways, okay? Get my Ultramarine Blue. And sometimes it's like a dance. You go back and forth and you have to change it. You get to know your paints and kind of how it goes. That'd be a good hair color, but that's not what I'm looking for. Okay. Need a little more red. Some of us have more kind of reddish, orangey-ish, tones. Some of us are more olive. Some of us are stark light blue tint, like myself. If I paint myself, it's definitely a lot more white and blues. And then we got to put some kind of white in there and see what we have. Now, sometimes you're like, oh, that's not it. And that's okay, because we can adjust it. We got something along the lines of that. Kind of. Feel like she needs, I think it's actually a little lighter. And I might tiny put a little tiny bit of yellow, possibly. It's a big experiment. So this is the mother. Mother kind of grew, but she'll shrink. Her children suck the life out of her, literally. So, okay. So I feel like that could be an okay place to start. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more red. I try to get it to where it feels, if I squint my eyes, what's kind of the overall, her overall skin tone. She does tan, but she's not she's got some red in her. She's Anglo-Saxon. I'm gonna make sure, get that in there. And then a little bit more light here. Okay? And even if it's not perfect, it's okay. Because generational trauma is real, and we can change it, okay? We can change it. It's like Encanto, all right? We're going to make it to where we need it to go. So I usually will make a really light version of the color and see what it looks like. Make sure I'm on the right track here. It feels pretty okay. And I'm working on more this section, more so. As I move, Mother's gonna have little shifts and quarter life crisis and midlife and all that. So got that color. It gets a little redder there. Maybe I'll make a slightly redder version. Yeah, feel free to come up with. I literally have 2 children, 4 dogs, and a very whatever is it called, the love languages is physical touch for my husband. So it's fine. Everybody's up in my business, even the dogs. When I paint, they're at my feet. It's very sweet. Okay. I guess Mother has a dual personality here, okay? So I'm gonna get some more white. So every skin tone is some combination of white, red, blue, and yellow, the primaries. Now, if I were painting me, because I know I'm cooler skinned, I would have used alizarin as my red maybe just to see what it would look like, because I don't really tan, so I just toast marshmallow basically.
Didn't you have me use green on the Nico for mine?
I did use the green on yours for, what did I use? It's on your hair.
Oh, it was her face that we had to make some orange but pink. You didn't use
We toned it down with green.
You toned it down.
So here's another great question. What do you do when you need to tone a red? Or maybe you're trying to make, the shadow color of this guy here. The outcast of the family. There you go. So the color opposite of a red would be some kind of green. So we have our Viridian green that we could use, which I'll try it just because that's like the standard one you have. I have some other like greens too, but it should be fine. A little goes a long way, so try not to go too much. So see how that just like tones it just a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's toning. Now if you're trying to make like a shadow, my favorite shadow mix is the alizarin, and this is pretty much for everybody in that Viridian green. You should get like a purplish color.
And you're doing the green then now.
Yeah, green with the alizarin to get the shadow. And let's say, there's shadow, but it's kind of like right before the shadow is like its darkest.
Mm-hmm.
Could you lighten it with white? You could. Before I lighten anything with white, I try to use like a color that's, similar to it. So I'm going to try lightening it with just cadmium red to see if that would be better. There we go. So on the color wheel, if you're trying to lighten something, if you're looking at alizarin in that order, whatever colors are kind of a little bit below that would be a good choice to lighten it with, if you're trying to keep the temperature of the warm, the same.
But to get the flesh tones though, you were working with blue, not green then, huh?
For whose?
For the flesh tones, didn't you add blue up in there too, or?
I haven't got to that yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So this is all kind of this section, and then I'll talk about more like the blues and greens when we get down to here. So. So like if there's where's my So the color wheels, there's like a few in here, but you can even just look at the basic one eventually when I get there. So sometimes if I'm trying to lighten a color, let's say I'm trying to lighten orange, I'll just use yellow to lighten it since they're kind of related anyway. And like for alizarin right here, if I'm trying to lighten it, the next color light is to it is red. So I'll do that. So it's just kind of a little trick you can use to try to lighten a color but keep it in the family. Very, Greek gods, very Game of Thrones. But you break the rules later all the time. If you want to lighten it with the blue, then go for it. We know what that does sometimes based on our examples in that slide too, where you can make really cool like muted colors and things like that. Okay. Alrighty, I think that's a good place to start. So I generally try to make like 5 colors, and then from there, I intuitively just kind of mix as I go what I need. But I know as a beginner it can be overwhelming just to go right into it, because you're still learning how to mix colors. I've never painted Chandler in this mode before. Many of you probably have not either, since it's a photo that I got. It's good to start with something. Now, if you don't know what colors to do, I guarantee these come from, if I looked at the little chart that I gave y'all. Oh, look at that, I'm good. You can use the colors I gave you too, as like your beginning colors, that first like little row, and go from there. So, all right. My favorite place is to start with the eyes, but that might not be yours, and that's okay. You give yourself a little treat. This is like a new thing. Maybe you've never painted. I'm so sorry, there's so many obstacles. Where'd my coat paintbrush go? You know, I try to pick somewhere that's fun because it's already kind of a vulnerable thing. Maybe you don't know exactly how it's gonna go. Remember the analogy of like creativity and inner critic being a little intoxicated and pushing you around as you're trying to throw something on the dartboard. Boom. But as they start to chill out, sober up, and you're like, I got this, guys. It's okay. The first layer's always weird. It's gonna be fine. It's just a painting. Then they eventually sit down and they don't push you around, and you're able to get closer to the dartboard the longer you know, learn the face and work on it. The first pass is always gonna be like a little bit, you know, rough, and that's okay. I would rather you have your first pass be rough and then be able to find details later than like try to go really detailed right away. Okay, so I'm just using a round, like, one brush, I want to say. Sorry, my kid got his tonsils out today, so I'm going to make sure he's okay. Oh. Looks like he's doing better. Okay. Yeah, I was up this morning doing that. That was a little poor guy. Okay, I'm going to make a darker version of that because I know I need it probably in the eyelashes. So I'm using that same recipe. And just keeping that one without the cadmium red. Okay, now I know her eyes are actually blue because I know her, and based on this picture of, you know, we have of her, I know her eyes are a dark blue. Now, is somebody gonna come up to you when you work on your painting and be like, can I see the reference photo in which that you got those eyes from? Mm-hmm. No. No one's gonna be doing that. Only you are gonna know the secret. So you could look at other pictures of her. You could literally Google dark blue eyes. Maybe try that. No one's gonna know. Artistic license. Pictures flatten and change things all the time. I have so many childhood like pictures from like a DS, you know, like disposable camera. And how many red eyes I have? Crazy. Do I actually have red eyes? No. It's just the light. So I'm gonna start with her eyeball a little bit. I got ultramarine blue, and her eyes aren't that blue, so I need to tone them down a little bit. I could use orange, or orange's, you know, cousin. Burnt sienna's kind of an orange too. You can probably, I have orange already mixed, but you'd mix your own orange or whatever have you, but let's see what that does. Okay. So it tones it down, but I know there's areas of it that aren't that dark, so we're gonna have little micro babies down here. So for your eyes in the beginning, find like 3 values, including the pupil and the rim, which is usually the darkest one. And then, you know, maybe a color or 2 in the iris, and then let it dry, and then you can fixate and come back later. You gotta get like the gist of it first. So I need to make like a hybrid of that, probably. Still a little bit too much. These primaries are bold and bossy, and just need to have like some options there. And worst case, like I paint her eyes and I'm like, you know what, they're actually more blue-green. You can come back and add a little green if you want. Nothing set in stone. I feel like that's pretty okay for now. We can stare at her eyeballs next week. Get real close and personal. Okay, so I have my peach black, which I do like, but I don't want to use just straight peach black, so I'm going to mix. I think I'm going to do blue with the peach black. Usually for the pupil and the rim of the iris, I'll try to make it like the darkest hue of the eyeball, if that makes sense. So if I'm doing brown eyes, for example, I would make like the darkest brown I can think of, or like a really dark purple brown. Or so that's just me. Not everybody does that, but I like to do that. Okay. I think it needs a little bit darker. You could also use your burnt umber to make blue darker as well. And it's hard to see her iris, but just do the best we can. I can look at my photos. Just get something in there. We're just trying to get something on the dartboard. And I do have my phone camera, and I could Maybe I'll lighten the picture so that I can see it better. There we go. So if I like made her real blown up, I could see where the light hues are. Can you guys see that? Okay. We are magicians. We break rules. We use all sorts of tools, and I promise you that Da Vinci would have totally used the tools we had if he could have. I'm using that kind of like little bit darker blue here. Now, rule of thumb, if somebody's eyes are like open in, you know, normal way like this, the top of the iris is usually in shadow, so it's pretty dang close to what the pupil would be like. You want to think of it as like the lids are a canopy that are. Actually, I need to make that a little bit smaller. That's okay. That's covering part of the eye. The eye is the sphere inside a socket, so there's going to be different ways that light is captured. So, I need to make sure. I actually might want to go like lighter than what I have here. Artistic license. I know it's not going to stay this way completely, but we just need something on the dartboard. And I need to get the white of the eye. So our brains are like, oh my gosh, white of the eye. Don't do just white. Because we have fatigue, blood vessels, stress. We have also, on a lighter note, just reflections that happen on the eyeball. So it's actually, if the light is more so hitting that side of the eye, it's usually like kind of a pinker white. Sometimes it's like a grayer depending on which side, but and I happen to have that pink, but I can use a little cadmium red. Be a good girl here. And use what you guys have too. There you go. If you're not sure, bring up your paintbrush to it, and it's usually just like that off white. If you've ever painted your house or any kind of wall, or even looked at paint sections, there's so many different kinds of whites, it's a little overwhelming. And Swiss Cottage is definitely different from Studio White. Now, I don't have a super, like, I have kind of shaky hands because I already have pre-arthritis, so we'll just fix things the other way around. I'm going to try to keep my head out of here. So if I know I'm not going to get it perfectly, I'm just going to use my brush and kind of change it. I also have my little friend, where are you? I have something called a wipeout tool that I really like as well. If I can find one. He's been kind of naughty lately and being lost. You can buy them at Michael's or art stores, and it's essentially just like this rubber brush that you can use to take stuff away or move things around. I also use it to sign my work because I am not about trying to write with a paintbrush in that way. It always looks different. I just can't. So there's all sorts of ways we can get to where we want to go. Oops. I'm going to use my teensiest brush, try to see if I can get this shape better because it's massive. Too big of an iris. Okay. Get to the skin here. And then I'll come back and put that dark back there. And remember, we all see color differently too, so you know, even like just slight percentages, we see things slightly different. Especially for my dudes in here. A lot of y'all don't see quite the same. My husband is colorblind a little bit. It's a little sensitive subject, but he is a little bit. And there's nothing that like gets me more than when my son's wearing like green and red together. Not on Christmas. I'm like, why is he with olive pants and a bright red shirt? It's like, what do you mean? It's brown. Oh
She's not wearing a gray top and gray pants.
I would take that, honestly.
That's my brother
Right.
does. It drives me insane. He wears a slouchy gray top and gray sweat shorts. It's like, Spencer, you gotta change. I don't care if you're
Like, get out. And it's a dance. It's really like a push and pull. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit and use my Radiant Blue, which is essentially like, it's like ultramarine blue, but made with like a little bit extra of some other pigment. But it's pretty close if you used white and that together. Okay. And then I'm going to put that dark back that I took out on accident. Nothing's ever set in stone. I remember when I was learning, I would do something and I'd be like, it's done. It's over. I ruined it. I'm done. No, you can always fix stuff, especially oil paint. And it's all going to be okay. It's just panel. You can always sand it or erase it, whatever you need to do. And I know it's going to change no matter what. I need to get some highlight in there just so I can not have to be like, oops, I forgot that later. And I like my highlight, I don't use just white, I'll mix white with like yellow or something. Kind of just depends on the vibe. I might do yellow one. And it's just like a teeny bit of yellow. Just a teeny bit. Okay, so let's get the skin around that and grow from here because I got like 15 minutes before I want you guys just to be able to work too. So I am kind of seeing this blood vessel-y color right there. Maybe I'll try that. Maybe Mommy's done, see, it's like the mother has lots of affairs, but in this world it's okay. And you just choose some other colors to doctor things up, and that's what's nice about having some piles made is you can kind of like keep everything related in a way, and sometimes it's just like a little bit of a change that you need and not super drastic. And I'm going to use, where's my little tiny thing? So I need to get like an in-between color, which I could mix them together, or I can, you know, have a little orphan on the spot here. Kind of blend those together. Okay. All right, so let's start moving kind of around here. The lids are always kind of interesting because our brain wants it to be, we're like, oh, it's kind of purple, and then we make this like Barney purple, and it's just not it. And we need to kind of treat it like, okay, it's a thin skin, so it's in this, you know, shadowy kind of lane, but it's not quite as dark as like the darkest shadow I can make. It's kind of like the second darkest shadow almost there. Maybe I'll put a teeny bit more red. Anytime I'm mixing a color, I'm asking myself kind of, okay, in my piles, where does this kind of lean? Where does this follow? And does it need more red? Does it need more yellow? Does it need more blue? Or do I need to like tone it? Or do I need to lighten it? You're kind of asking all those things. And honestly, a lot of painting is experimenting and mixing lots of stuff. But notice when I mix, I'm not mixing like giant piles. I'm making like little baby piles. And there's like a little highlight behind where her eyelashes are, which I could either fixate on or just kind of do a little something there. Because at first, she's not going to have eyelashes. That's all right. We'll get a little bit of an eyelash line, but I'm going to wait for a second. Okay, and as we hop up, the bone right above the socket, bam, it's a lot lighter. I would say it falls into like the fleshy tone that's warmer family that I have. Maybe it's these, oh, see? Plot twist. The mother has a split personality. Here we go. And they have morphed into one. Okay, I have to say silly stuff so y'all don't forget. Okay, and then here, and then it gets lighter as it gets to that bone. So something that I like to do that helps paint be on the photo is think about your brush strokes and the directions in which you paint them. So I'm trying to think like a sculptor almost of, you know, if I was, you know, moving my finger across that bone, like what direction would that be? I'm trying to think of them in, you know, 3D kind of shapes. So painting beyond the photo also includes, you know, technique in the sense of how do I want to put my strokes in? Do I want it to be all the same direction? Do I want to do hatching? Kind of like when you're drawing, you do hatching or stippling, right, stuff. You could also mix different things together too. And the first pass, you're not going to have, I mean, not like a ton that's necessarily noticeable at first, but layers build up on each other. So it's just, I think the first layer is a good time to experiment with different ones. A little hybrid right here. So it's getting a little bit redder as it gets in that section, so I'm kind of moving it into a more pinker color here. And I need to go to that side too. It looks like it's closer to this color, but maybe I need to like Game of Thrones this and move this down. Mix, you know, Persephone and Hades together. And put, which makes sense if it's going into the socket and there's blood and movement, all that, you know, it's gonna get a little bit more red. So that makes sense. Is this making sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, as you move into other areas of the skin, you could totally get bigger brushes and do bigger strokes. It just kind of depends on what is enjoyable to you. For me, I like a mix of doing all of them, but like with the eyes, I find smaller brushes just work better. So let me get to the eyebrow here. Yeah, feel free to come up close if you'd like to. I'm sorry, there's so much stuff. And she's got like, it's kind of like purpley brown. Oh, okay. And so at first, I just put in a color because we're gonna need to knit and weave skin tone into it. So I'm just gonna get something in there for now. The value is usually lighter a tiny bit at the top, and then it's a little darker at the bottom, but it, honestly, she could have drawn on her eyelashes, eyebrows, and that can change the game a little bit, but I'm going to do it a little bit anyway. And then how the heck would you weave them together if you wanted to start to? You could either use a wipeout tool and kind of make some parking spaces, or you can just be like me and I'll just get a small brush and use straight up paint because there's going to be in between mixes anyway. So I'm trying to think about the direction that I'm seeing the hair growth. I'm also giving myself grace because it's going to take a layer or two to get, you know, to where I want to go with this. And it's not going to be like a one-pass deal. And there might be times where I'm like, oh, I got rid of this thing on accident, or did this or that, and that's okay. You just come back. I just like to at least get something in there. The closer the hairs are together, the less skin you see. So right here, if you're doing that part of the eyebrow, it's going to be like kind of a more darker red color. So, and I would say like the Hades and Persephone mix I joked about right here would be a good one. So the closer the hairs are together in an eyebrow, the more red and like closer to the brow color that you're going to see more so in between. But it still makes a difference. So make more of that green and red purple here. Alizarin and Viridian mix because I ran out a little bit. And then put a tiny bit of that red in it, lighten it just a teeny bit. And it's gonna take layers, kind of like doing hair. If any of you like ventured into hair, we'll talk about it a little bit too. Because that's a thing. And I'm gonna record doing this pass and make sure it actually works. And I'll talk about hair in there too. Okay, so the top here, there's a bone. And you'll see me sometimes clean my brush with plain safflower oil versus the turpentine, and I'm just doing that so it's easier also with demoing, but you can use your turpentine to clean your brush. I'm just trying to do this as efficient as possible. Okay, so that skin tone is kind of in here. So these two mixed again, maybe. I'll bring up my brush literally to that, but I'm also not going to make it look as pink. So I think this is a better color for this in the long run. Now, one of the things my friend and mentor would tell me is also, like, in the beginning, be as dramatic as you want with your colors, because you can always tone it down. It's harder to like bring color into it when everything's very like muted at first. Not impossible, but it's better to like have to tone it down. Sorry, I think that's my child. Okay, he's okay. Yeah, my little 4-year-old got his tonsils out this morning. And, he's with Dad. And Dad's probably like, oh my gosh. That's okay. That's alright. So notice I'm hatching that color into the brow a little bit. Am I gonna have to go back and fill the brow a little bit? Yeah, but that's okay. It's kind of a dance back and forth. And I know I'm gonna have to like adjust it. And sometimes things are easier to fix and like enhance when you have like a first layer dried. It's really satisfying. It feels like doing like makeup or something. All right, so I'm gonna use the more yellowy skin tone as we get here. I already kind of mixed up, and again, I'm using the reference, but I'm also using my artistic license and peeking at the picture of her that I have on my phone that's a little different, so I can make some decisions. Because even let's say like I do this and I'm like, oh, you know, maybe I'm gonna change it. That's okay. Layers build up on each other, and nothing is ever super set in stone. And the first layer, so like just get something down and have like, you know, as much values as accurate as possible, blah blah. And it's supposed to be fun anyways, so try not to take it too serious, because we can always adjust, and no one will know the ugly secrets but you. I remember seeing stuff and like I remember how hideous that was. Oh my gosh. But no one knows but me. And that's okay. Maybe people will follow me on Instagram. If they remember. So I'm switching back from this kind of pinker to mixture with the tanner yellow one to back to the tanner more yellow tone, and then as it gets lighter I'll have to kind of move back and over here. So if her head is turning and the light's coming this way, then that makes sense that this area is lighter. So I'm going to get a bigger brush so this can go a little faster. It's already almost time. Okay. And remember, feel free to ask questions because I can't really see y'all. I'm going to get a little more medium here. Go. If you're like, I don't know how many values to do, squint and do like, pick in this section, pick like 3 minimum, maximum 5, and get something down. Because all the nuances and all the in-betweens will happen naturally, and if you can get like the main ones in, then it's all good. So something that you learn as a portrait artist, and sometimes you can see it in a photo, but they call it like heat lines, which is when a form turns and you're not able to see like the other side of it. There's like this kind of reflected light, but because it's, you know, we're flesh and bone, it's going to show up more pink because of like blood flow. And right before it enters the shadow, there's always like just this little bit of pink in between. And then in between that is usually some kind of mix of cadmium and alizarin crimson that's like ever so tiny. Oops.
Is it a different shade with like darker skin tone?
Same family, but it's a different
It's like
shade.
a redder
Yeah,
tone of it.
yeah. So like with my friend Charmise, it was still red, but like this pink was darker. It was like because of her pigmentation, she has more melanin, so it was more like pinkish purple versus this color. Oh, that's a great question. And then it's like, Shelby, that seems so bizarre. But you'll see the magic soon. And then I'll feather it with a soft brush and kind of be like, baby, it's okay. You're not going to be that visible. You're just a magic trick. Oh, it's going to realize you're there. Because that's actually what's going to make the form look like it's turning, is having those various heat lines. Now, a lot of the time you don't see them very well in pictures. Sometimes you can. But in person, because of this knowledge, I know if I want to make, my painting feel more lifelike or have more energy, then I want to try to emphasize the things I know from looking at somebody from life. And I am not a gatekeeper. I will tell you all the things so that you may decide if you want to do that or not. But it's weird, it starts to make the form feel more 3D. Let me get the rest of the full head in here. I wish we had more time in here. It always was so close. Okay, then it gets a little more pink. Just like slightly. And I'm moving my strokes a little bit more horizontal, but curving, kind of. You could totally go vertical as well. Mix and match, whatever you want to do. So I mentioned this last week, but if you weren't here, if you want something to appear lighter, doing like the highlight, for example, horizontal lines catch more light, like reflectively. And if you want something to feel darker, vertical, we don't catch the light in that direction as easily, so it makes things look darker even if it's not. So if you want something to stand out and like a highlight or different pieces of hair, skin, changing the direction of your strokes. Now diagonal and all that stuff, they kind of flirt with the line. Very Switzerland of them, but it can make a difference. So a lot of the time you'll see me do shadows and stuff that I want to feel darker. I'll do it in a more horizontal-ish fashion, and if I want something to feel like there's light, and the light's catching, I'll try to keep my strokes more in the horizontal, section. Now rules are meant to be broken, but that is a trick you can use as a painter, like science-y kind of trick of fooling the eye into showing like, oh, like, why does this area feel so much lighter even though it's not? Because this is actually not that much lighter than this, but because the way the light catches strokes, it can make it seem. Isn't that weird? Super weird. If I put it over here in this direction, it's like, whatever. And that's crazy. Crazy town. So, okay. Let's see here. Now we move into the nose. So as the face, if you go down the nose here, there is that like bone. It starts to get a little bit darker in value, but not like super dark. So if you remember the value studies we looked at was like the hues and where they fall. Reds usually fall closer, like a pure, where you don't tone it and you don't lighten it. They fall in like the middle. And I bet you if we looked at a black and white of this would be like close to like a mid-tone or slightly darker. So, and if you're not sure, you can always photograph your painting, filter black and white, and then look at it in comparison to your black and white if you're really worried about it. But I don't want you to fixate it on it either, so you can just kind of enjoy the process and then, check it later. It would be good as skin pinches together, like we're, you know, there's like kind of areas that are closer. Those heat lines also are really apparent. So I'm using a filbert that's a little bigger, but it has a good point on it, just to show you don't have to always have the tiny brushes. And I'm just gonna kind of get that in there. There's also a little bit in the eyebrow, but I get it in here too. Okay. Because when there's folds, it's like the blood, you know, the blood rushing through the skin, all that stuff underneath, it compresses so we can see more of it, the opacity in that part of the skin. Now, you know this after painting for a very long time and having like almost, I don't know, just like repetition and like sometimes like PTSD of making the wrong color too much or whatever. You learn happy accidents using, see how it's changing as the light is coming this way, so it's dark and then it gets a little bit lighter. So I'm just following that with the colors I have up here. Now you can paint way slower than me. I've been painting for a long time, so some of these things I have kind of like this muscle memory of like, oh yeah, I remember doing this color one time, and having that eureka moment when I realized I've been doing it wrong forever and whatever it might be. And you can go as slow as you want. It's not a race. I feel like I'm a super slow painter compared to a lot of people I know. Because like there's already so many timelines in my life. If it's like not a commission and it's for myself, like we have taxes, we have all these things that aren't fun, that require timelines, and I don't want my art to be that way. I'm a little bit anti-establishment that way, I suppose. So I don't feel like you have to race by any means. So I'm going to come back to that orangey color, and I need to kind of weave back into here. So if you're trying to lighten an in-between area, kind of push from the lighter side into the darker side. If you're trying to bring some of that darker color into the lighter, then you'd be the opposite. You bring some of the darker tone up through that way. Ooh, the laugh track's left. They're like, doesn't sound like Seinfeld yet though, so we should be okay a little bit. Okay, making some more of that shadow color because I ran out. And it's like, oh, Shelby, should I just make a giant pile of that? You could, but also, as your teacher, I will say, I think it's better if you don't make, you know, too many piles, because then one, if you don't use it all, it can be kind of a bummer, but two, then it teaches you and makes you practice how to do that mixture. And get that lid there. I'm not going to do all that eye because I want to try to get in here. It's 3806. Okay, now that highlight area, well, let's see, there's like a little bit of a pinker version of this. It might be too pink, take it back, that works. And I'm getting to know the thing. I haven't painted this picture of her before. We're on this journey together. And then it kind of comes across here, which makes sense because part of the form, you know, the edges, the top, you know, ridge of the nose is catching more light, so. And I'm just generalizing. I'm squinting and just trying to see, like, the gist of what I have going on here. I'm going to use a little bit of that burnt sienna. I think might be good here. A burnt sienna you could make. It's kind of like the first color I had, but less white. Technically, if I was kind of like my pseudo-fascist art professor, you guys would only have 4 colors. But that's not a way to live. So, this is supposed to be fun. If you want to do that in your own time and not feel like a punishment, that's cool, but it felt like a punishment to me. And I did learn, but this is supposed to, you know, this continuing as this is supposed to be like, I don't grade. It's what I'll never do, like the tenor thing. They're like, you want to do this one? No. Sorry. I don't like to grade. I'd be the worst. They'd be like, you can't give everybody an A. Like, yes, I can. Okay. And then right here where the nostril is like kind of curving, that makes sense that that's a little bit lighter. And I'm changing my strokes a little bit here. Kind of need to come back and get some more of that red. So now my skin tones, if I'm trying to follow the science behind like skin tone shifting, then I'm trying to get a little bit more of like a redder flesh tone. Kind of lost some of that here. And that comes up here. Corner guy has it a little bit. Not so red though. Tone it down. My shadow. And I know for a lot of y'all in the black and white, it's kind of tough because a lot of the values are pretty similar. So this is where color is great because our brain can read the information, honestly, especially when the lighting is more subtle. Like we can actually read what's happening better because we're also looking at color. Because color can also like give a feeling of something that's, you know, being just slightly darker versus just gray. Some temperatures, all that stuff. I'm getting my Filbert brush, pushing some of that down. And I need to get a highlight in there. Look, it's becoming. I know it's 8:09, so I can stop, or if y'all would like me just to keep going and then
That's fascinating.
and work, you know, during that. Next week it's going to be the next 2 weeks it's just working in class. So I'll do a little bit and then a little bit longer. I'll try to get into the mouth and then I'll stop and then kind of come and visit y'all. But if you'd like to come to Open Studio, that does make a huge difference. I'm sure some of your classmates can tell you if you're able to come because you get more time with me and you get more time to work, and the 2.5 hours just goes so fast. So you can see when I'm applying my highlight, I'm moving my strokes a little bit more in the horizontal fashion. I'm following the bridge of the nose. I'm not necessarily going to like hyper blend just yet, but if you feel compelled, you just have to. It's like this fine line of airbrushing versus like actually. So I'll just like tap the edge. I like the lines I made, so I don't want to like get rid of that. I'm just gonna like barely tap the edge with my soft silver brush. So I like having some lines like develop. Because if you look at our skin, we're all made up these little patches of color, and I just think it's kind of fun to try to keep some of that. Now, in the first layer, your highlight, unless you're laying it super opaque, and then you have to like wait for it to dry forever and then sand it off. It's never going to be as light as you want. I'm using this yellow light. I'm cheating real quick. Maybe let me clean this brush. It's called like it's like Vasari pale yellow or something. Radiant yellow is very similar. Get rid of that one. Or you can mix a little white and yellow. As you start to paint more, it's like when you have more colors, it's just like a less step sometimes. And so like mixing that color to make the others just kind of saves a little time, but it's still good to know how to use the primaries, otherwise you don't really know what to do with all these little babies. So to save a little time, instead of mixing my yellow and white, I just use that guy. And let's say you're like, I don't know, Shelby, these lines would be crazy. I will use, sometimes I'll just kind of like tap on top. And you can even drag some of it around. Sometimes it's not necessarily more paint than it is just kind of moving it around. I'm going to make that in-between color here. Okay. And then let's get that nostril. So that's where the shadow color comes in with the alizarin and viridian that I really like. Because, if I were to grab Sadie and make her flash, a flashlight up my nose, and you'd see all my vessels, all the fun things, super weird and fun, you would see that it's red. So we're trying to do the absence of light on red, and it should be a purple. So a lot of us, would think, oh, it'd be black, but if you're trying to make it more lifelike, we want the darkest purple red possible, because that's what's under there. and it seems like a little thing, but it makes a huge difference. And then that heat line I mentioned with that like mixture of alizarin and cadmium, it also happens where cavities of the face open. So we had it a little bit here, I lost it a little bit. Anytime there's like a cavity or opening, there's going to be some of that warmer red. That is like the reflected light around there. And it's not that thick, I just don't have the patience to like, I don't want to just sit there and try to get the tiniest line ever when I can just push the paint a little bit and take some off.
So when you're doing the grisaille process, do
Mhm.
you try to match the same colors on this, or do you have to?
Yeah,
adjust
I
it?
try to, but you would just be using thinner paint. So like
Right.
if you were doing the grisaille on this, you could do what I'm doing with the colors, but you'd just be using like 50-50
Right.
medium. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I didn't know if you needed to adjust.
No, that's a great question. You could, like, some artists will be like, well, you know, I know this is like really dark underneath, so I don't necessarily need to mute my purple that much, so maybe I'll just do a thin coat. It's kind of depends. I feel like when it's super dark in value, it's not, you don't really need to like adjust the value as much as like keeping the color family. Like, cause I actually just put straight up ultramarine on top of the black and it was fine. Because try to think of it as like that value underneath is mixing with the color just a little bit. But yeah, for the face, like essentially did the same, you know, similar colors, but I'm building up transparency to keep that value study to be like the, you know, meat and potatoes of what's happening. Now, it's not my favorite way to paint, but it is a good way to learn value. So let's say you're like, Shelby, the grisaille, I can't stand it. Pretend grisaille didn't happen. And just paint like this on top if you can't, if you want to. This is supposed to be fun, okay? I'm mixing a little alizarin with my peach black because she's definitely wearing makeup. I think I need to get that line in there just a little bit. And then I'm squinting. I'm not trying to see all the details of the lash, but I'm just going to get the shape in there before I forget it here. But yeah, great question. And again, like, this is for your enjoyment and fulfillment, and if, you know, if it's like, if you guys like decide the grisaille is not like your thing, but you did the value study and that, like, that's amazing you did the value study because that's the most important part. Feel free to do your, you know, especially your personal one that you choose, like, you can do whatever method you'd like to do. Like the gray method, it is, you learn a lot, but it's like, it's mind bending a little bit. Okay. Needs to come up a little bit. And then I need to get that line in here. Back in here. You're always redrawing when you're painting because you lose stuff. Okay, now let's get to here into the mouth, and then I am going to stop for now. But I will work on it more and record it at home too to make sure my actual camera works, okay? And then around the nostril too, there's gonna be a little bit of that heat line very subtly. You can kind of see it in the photo. Shadow, and also it's where like a plane changes in the face, there's usually some kind of heat change there. So I'll put in a line that's thicker technically, and then I just smush it down, get rid of it a little bit. Because I don't have time to be worried about that part, because I can get that in a different way. It's like my brother I told y'all about who took State Street from Salt Lake City to Orem for my wedding rehearsal and thought that was a good idea. He got there, but could he have taken 15? Yeah. Could he have taken Pony Express? Something? Yeah, but you know, we all have our ways, and that's okay. Something else to note too, in your first pass, even with doing the more opaque color, when it dries, we're still working with transparency, so it'll feel like, oh, my color's not as vibrant as it was when I had it wet. That's normal. It takes like to the second pass for the color to stay closer to what you want. Okay, shadow here. Kind not like that dark, so maybe I need to mix another red with my shadow color. But then it's not that saturated. Done. How do I tone that down? Anyone? I got green, I got some white. It is a little lighter, so maybe I could use white for now. Let's see what happens. Kinda, it still is a little bit pinkish, so if I want to tone down my pink, I got Viridian, I got all these colors. So this is that radiant green I told you guys about that I like. It's a way for me to tone something and lighten it at the same time. If you remember, you look back on our color theory pages, this was one of those colors that changed, I think, the red. See how subtle that is? Subtle. Now, could you have mixed white and green and done that kind of similarly? Yeah, for sure. But it can be fun. I'm going to give you all samples and goodies next week if you don't have anything. So you've earned the goodies. It kind of comes up here. Noses are weird, but just try to treat them like an abstract kind of blob. And if you want to turn your painting upside down and like abstract things that way, I do that all the time. I did that with her. And I will continue probably because it's kind of trippy. I'll have to show you guys or bring this black and white commission I have, which is so ironic. So I was like, oh really? I'm doing kind of something like that for my class. But it's kind of sweet. I had to Photoshop and do a lot of like imagination. It's not a real photo, but essentially this gal wanted a painting of her husband with his grandfather who passed away in May duck hunt. So I had to like,
That's kind of cool.
yeah, I actually like it. I'll show you a picture, bring it next week. But you know, he has his dog with him, but I had a picture of like her husband and the dog, but not grandpa, you know? So anyway, but she wanted a black and white, which that was kind of interesting, but I was like, wow, I'm getting practice for this. Awesome. But anyway, and even though it's a commission, it's kind of, you know, sweet concept, so hopefully it'll turn out. It is nice I'm only using black and white paint, and doing the grisaille, it's like, helped me have some good practice. Alright, now we make our way into the lippy lip. This part's so interesting. Bless you. Reminds me of my father has the most obnoxious sneeze. Like, I think it's because he's slightly a narcissist, so it like gets some attention. But he'll like go, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you totally do that on purpose. But actually I wonder now if he's older, if it's just like an aging and just not hearing how loud he is. But anyway.
How do you take the color down like darker without using black?
How do you make it darker?
Yeah.
Color opposite. So.
Okay, I thought you were using that to neutralize it. That makes sense.
Oh, it does. So it's kind of a balance. If you're using like equal parts, you get like the darker version.
Okay.
If you're using just like a flick, it's toning.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense? Or if you have peach black, you could add like the color with a little bit of black, but you just have to remember if it's not peach black and then like if it's ivory, it's just gonna make it more blue, so you might have to add like a red to it. Yeah, it's a snooty one you have to order apparently. I didn't know. It's like snooty. Yeah, I guess it's like patented by Sennelier and like Colbian. I didn't know that. I'll let you guys try some next time. Okay, and there's this weird. We know there's a nostril there, and your inner critic, anxiety, you know, whatever you want to call them, is gonna be like, I know there's a nostril there. Hey, she has a nostril there, and you're gonna be like, or want to, don't do it. If you don't see it, don't do it. Otherwise, it's gonna look like there's like an olive coming out of her nose or something, and that's not what's happening. Hopefully. So really trust what you're seeing. If you're having a hard time with it, flip your painting the other direction and abstract it, like make your brain, like trick your brain a little bit. Because 3/4 perspective can drive your inner critic crazy. It feels so unsafe. Feels so weird. But again, repetition and then like training your inner critic to trust you and not equivalent it to like crossing the street while a bus is passing. It'll be okay. Alright, so that really dark like part of her lip, it's like turning. So interesting. I think because that's where the little
This looks like her lipstick is smudged.
it's like something like she's reflecting. I don't know. Maybe she has like a very round area of her lip there, is my guess. Somebody use alizarin and cadmium red to try to see if I can get like a in-between red and
Yeah, that's it.
feels pretty good. If I want to darken this red, I could either add more alizarin and try, or I could add my complement, just like a teens. Teens. Tinier than that. Toning, it's like a dot of the complement, pretty much. If you're trying to like make it darker, then it's like a lot more of the complement. Okay, I'm going to get a little blendy blend brush. I'm going to try to make that not so harsh. And you have to literally like baby to yourself, like I'm doing what I see, I'm doing what I see. Because yeah, she's got some expression. There's a story there for sure.
I meant mine, not yours.
Oh, well maybe she is a little mad in this though. I don't
She's kind
know.
of serious in that picture.
I think
but
this
mine,
was-
I just made mine look.
This may or may not have been post breakup. I'm not sure. Allegedly, I don't know. I never said anything. So the top lip usually is a little bit more cooler in value, or more like magenta-y leaning, and then the bottom lip, because it catches more light and it's fuller in volume, it's usually a little bit lighter in value, but also more on the cadmium side of things. And it's hard to tell, obviously, in a picture, but if you in person, it's easier to see. Like especially this section where it's, you know, the fullness of her lip. And even though it's just the beginning, I still like to practice, but also go ahead and get some of my mark making built up. So I'm hatching my lines that way. And as you approach the line, you know, where the lips part, there's shadow in there. And it's usually that alizarin and viridian color. If you need it darker, then you can add a teensy bit of blue or black. And now, another thing too, if you look at our anatomy studies on the lip, it's almost like the muscle right here is different than these, so there's always going to be a little more volume right here, and then it changes. Try to think of it like a pea, a bean, basically. Everything's food. So we're approaching that lip line. It's there over here, but it's going to be a lot more blended because it's almost closed. So I'm just going to put it in straight and then come back and blend it in and be okay. And kind of baby the thing. So our brain wants the lips to be perfectly parted, which I don't know a lot of people who walk around with their lips perfectly parted.
Hold down my.
To stretch your lip to be perfect straight line, that's a lot of work.
Oh, that kind of.
Napoleon would though, I would say.
I thought you meant like slightly like
Oh, that too. But no, people do that. But more like where your lip is straight. Because our lips aren't straight, they're curved, right? A little bit. They're having fun over there. Okay. And then right below the lip is usually a shadow. It's not as dark as in here, but it's kind of that in between of like in here to there. So I usually will kind of reuse that color if it's there. She's wearing some kind of lip gloss, so I feel like that's a good choice to keep it in the family. And then I gotta get the rest of that stuff there. I'm gonna mix those colors together in between. I'm gonna hatch it in there. And then like a in between of the shadow and that red. A lot of intermingling, very Game of Thrones, okay? Cousins of cousins and all things. It's like a soap opera. I'm married to your father. Or telenovelas, those are pretty fun.
Hilarious.
They're like, but didn't he murder your second sister's dad? Okay, so in the picture it looks really white, but I think I'm gonna do like a whitish pink. You can always change it later. But I do have this radiant pink. Because there's not necessarily anything that's pure white. White's the absence of color. So is black, but the values, there's a lot more light on there. So try to think of white as that usually reflects the color around it. So usually I will try to keep it closer to like an off-white pink if it's in the lip or whatever. Or you can play with it and do like yellow if you want to. We all see things a little different. Okay. Now, remember, we're still in the ugly stage. You don't have the pieces in. It's like bizarre when there's not other information around these lips. But I'm going to quickly get some of the skin around the lip so it feels more correct. Because don't judge it until it's other pieces are by it. Because you need the other color that's next to it to make this color feel right. Because right now I'm like, maybe it's too dark or whatever. But actually, when we get these on here, and I'm hatching with like a little round brush, that skin, you like really look at the mirror really up close on your lips. There's like this little lip line that catches light where it kind of weaves the lip and that part of the skin together. And usually that value's light-ish. So I like to try to make that line with just blending. But if I lose it later, I'll just put some back in there. But I'm trying to make it too dark. Oh yeah, that feels a lot better. And then this shadow, it's technically shadow, but it's still like closer to the light mode over here. So I think I have kind of that same family, but it needs to be more muted and down. So to me, I know in there it kind of looks more brown. But I'm gonna be a little drama. I know it gets cooler as it gets down there, so maybe I'll do it with a tiny bit of green in it. I don't know. We'll find out. With that red color, kind of make it more purple for fun. It needs to be muted, but I think it'd be fun to be dramatic and get a little more purple. And hey, if I hate it later, it's my dirty little secret. That was once purple. Because essentially, if the blood's rushing down this way and it's farther from the light, you know, it's technically just muted, which you could just add a little white or the complement tone it down. But as artists, you can kind of play, decide. You can dramatize things. Funnily enough, usually when we are more dramatic, especially when we're learning, it's usually actually more correct. We feel like it's so like bold and scandalous, but it's probably not. It's all kind of cool. Mixing with some of this radiant purple with flesh tone. These look like they're super powerful, but they're really subtle. That's why I like them. These lips are doing something interesting. shadow. Let it kind of get darkish. I know, it's so satisfying, it starts to look like a person. Okay. And I'll talk about hair in the demo, but I mentioned it to some of you guys, but try to think of it like it's bands of color. Try to squint and just see where the color shifts. The colors are going to shift actually more in a horizontal way. This like the way our hair grows, it's always darker usually because it hasn't seen the light. And then as we continue down, the value should get lighter. There's the halo around here that, you know, we have a round head hopefully, and that area gets lighter too. But if you get a little stuck, do it upside down. When I record the rest of this pass, I will talk more about the hair. But since it's 8:30, any questions before class is over? Let's see. Ooh.
I learned a lot.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
That's always good.
I've always thought, oh, you get the basic color on there and then you add, but no.
Yeah, I find sometimes if we try to generalize too much, then we feel like we put ourselves in a box. So I like to try to like get myself somewhere. If you want to see it in person better, I'll just go here. Camera off.
Oh, it's so much darker.
Yeah, it's like liquid, but it's in the tube, kind of like one you have. Yours is a little better though. Yours is like, oh, yours is in a gel.
No,
Oh.
mine is a little bottle. I don't know this one.
Oh, okay.
I just
And then